Hi, thanks for waking up and coming to see me. That was brave. Yeah. That was all true about me being the visionary in residence and so forth. I want to talk a little bit, half an hour, about the year 2027, 10 years from now. Like 10 years, and why that? Because everything we're passionate about right now will be old-fashioned in 10 years. So 2027, why is that my topic? Well, I think events are kind of going Germany's way. And not necessarily the way of Germans who like and admire Silicon Valley or California's way of life. Digital sucks, and what sucks about it? I mean, poor little digital. I knew her so well when she was young and fresh and pretty. Well, it's an industry like railroads or aviation, internal combustion for cars, telephone industry, global banking, real estate industry, atomic power, they're all industries. Clock ticks for all of them. What actually sucks about digital? I mean, is it the ones and zeros, which is, digital? No. What sucks, to tell you the truth, is wage stagnation and skyrocketing health and education costs against a backdrop of runaway income growth for the 1% and record corporate profits, 10 years of miserable austerity. That's what sucks. The economy is rigged for oligarchs who enrich themselves at the expense of regular people by spying on them with surveillance marketing. That's what sucks. Uberization and precarious employment, they're not too great either. Very modern, though. Could anything else suck about digital? Let me just get my jacket off. This is going to be good. Yeah. How about cyber crime, cyber war, cyber tax evasion and offshore banks, digital narcotics, black markets, harassment by organized online hate gangs, Facebook revolutions, terrorism? Nothing particularly new there. I mean, that's very 2017, but it's been coming quite a while. It's just bigger now. People got used to it. They pretend it doesn't suck, although they know very well that it does because they live it. Now, for Germany, however, this situation is comparatively pretty good compared to other states in the world. You're immunized to these problems because you understand them better than most other people, especially the spying. Germans just get it about that. They don't lie as much about it as the other major spying states. Germans always got it about Snowden from day one, but also Germans just have a better regulated economy and more humane social policies than most people. That's how it is. But if you're actually in the digital business, all that sounds a little disappointing. I mean, I don't really want humane social policy or truth or high philosophical values. What I really want are faster computers, more bandwidth, and access to tons of capital. And why can't I have those? Because the industry had those in 1987 and 1997 and 2007, and why can't we have some in 2017? And what about 2027? Where are our faster computers, our faster bandwidth, and our access to tons of capital? Well, look what happened to Britain and the USA. They had those stuff, they moved fast, and they broke stuff. And the upshot is Brexit and Donald Trump. Brexit is a digital media disaster, and Donald Trump is worse, and the rest of his allies in the US Congress may be worse than him. And Moore's Law, which drove all of this for 50 years, a couple of generations, has died. I mean, Moore's Law is gone. That's why you're not going to get the faster capital and the faster bandwidth. That belonged to your ancestors. That's not your future. If you want to see the mausoleum for Moore's Law, it's Apple's new corporate headquarters. It's a giant tomb for the propulsive power of that particular technical revolution. It's ending. It hasn't quite ended yet, but in 10 years it'll be obvious that it's over. Apple is selling jewelry. That's what they sell. And there is no singularity in California. There is I mean, Intel could not make it pay. I mean, I saw them struggle to keep Moore's Law alive. They were heroes about it. It didn't work. What you're seeing in California now are digital industry creating a Californian servant class. They're basically replacing mom. The innovation there is not a singularity. It's not skyrocketing faster computers or bigger bandwidth. It's basically innovation which is directly aimed at oppressing the underclass. And everybody knows it and can see it. I mean, they hate Uber. People hate Uber. It means the death of the era of good feelings that came with this constant Moore's Law style innovation. And that was an unforced error by Silicon Valley. It was in their DNA. They didn't have to give Travis Kalanick, a guy they despised and never trusted for good reason. They didn't have to give him all that venture capital. But they saw him as an expendable probe. So they cynically gave him money to see how much law-breaking he could get away with in the name of their disruption activities. That was hubris, and nemesis is well on the way. The mausoleum for Moore's Law. They couldn't make it pay under the Washington Consensus in their version of global neoliberalism. They just couldn't make it pay. So now Silicon Valley is becoming Detroit because that's the logic of American industrial development. Tech has lost its charmed life. Even the Apple App Store has died. It's quite like the space race after the American moon landing, or it's quite like the end of the Californian gold rush. This is California's DNA, and time passes for everyone, and consequences always arise. Stuff that seems revolutionary and disruptive in 2017 is mostly frills for rich people. I don't want to keep you too long, but I think I'd run through a few of these. This is kind of the digital industry's official next 10 years. Virtual reality and augmented reality. Okay, I love them. I will always love them. They're very entertaining. They're delightful. I don't think they're like a big revolution. Robots. Robots are generally important and really moving fast, but Germans love robots. Germans are like way into the robots. It's like, go for it. You can't have too many. Spaceships, okay, they're glamorous toys. They have nowhere to go. The International Space Station may be gone in 2027. What are all these rich guys going to be doing with their rockets? I have no idea. Deep learners, they're very interesting technically. They're more limited than people think. They're not general augmented, they're not general artificial intelligence. We're not going to get artificial intelligence in 10 years. The Internet of Things. I love this, but it's too fragmented, it's insecure, it's menaced by thieves and bandits, and it's suffering from industry consolidation. Self-driving cars, I think they're years away. I don't think we're going to see a lot of self-driving cars in 2017. We'll see some, especially like self-driving grocery carts, little delivery units. But you know, Germany loves these too. Germany loves self-driving cars. Go for the robots, go for the self-driving cars. You're going to do pretty well. The cloud, okay, people have talked about it for a long time. The cloud actually harms Moore's Law. I mean, the cloud is one of the reasons that Moore's Law has died, because it consolidates industries, and renting the means of production is not as good as owning them. Drones, people go on and on about drones. They're romantic, they kill people. They're going to proliferate militarily. Everybody's going to have one in 2017. They're going to be seen as mostly a problem. And then the personal computer, which arrived when I was an adult. Okay, by 2017, I don't think there will be any. I mean, there just won't be many standalone desktop machines that are meant for a lone person. The lone individual ideology, the personal computer, you know, a computer which is not social but belongs just to me. Instead of IBM or a big corporation, they're all going to be linked to the big corporations, to Google, Apple, Facebook, Amazon, Microsoft, Huawei, Samsung, and so forth. I mean, that's what computers will do. And, you know, this is the end of Steve Jobs' world-changing idea. It's the movement from the Steve Jobs garage to the Steve Jobs theater. The Steve Jobs theater and the mausoleum for Moore's Law. That's where it's happening. And in 2027, all that's going to be obvious. It'll be historical. So, if you happen to be European right now, what can you actually do today in 2017 that will actually look pretty good in 2027 and make you feel proud of yourself despite these circumstances? Well, first, you should ignore everything Britain ever says. And stop worrying about the American State Department. They're not going to put any pressure on you because they're having a purge. So that being the case, you can do the things that Europeans have been sort of wanting, kind of thinking that maybe they ought to do for maybe 30 or 40 years. This is kind of a golden historical moment for European activism because everybody else is so disturbed or discombobulated or disenchanted. So I'd be thinking the likes of a European centralized army, European border controls, decarbonize the European economy so the Russians can't blackmail you anymore. I mean, that won't be good for them. They'll go broke again, the Russians, but they go broke all the time, so what the heck. Some transnational European political parties would be a good idea. Some more genuine and democratic and representational European parliament. Maybe a constitution of some kind even. European civil rights, European human rights. You could find a way to stop strangling and oppressing Portugal, Italy, Greece, and Spain. You know, they're in the basement, they've suffered enough. Spain's actually cracking up from the pressure now. You got to come up with some method to include them better. You can make nice with Japan and Canada. They're not crazy like the US and Britain. It's a time to like go ally yourself with them. There's a lot to do. Japan, Canada, they're perfectly fine. Make them your friends. Do that while the US and the UK are in internal disarray. Basic European Union soft power activities. Things Europeans always secretly want to do, but don't because they're not really masters in their own house. Europe is a complicated place. It's hard to reach these decisions. So, if you want just a simple way to do it, just listen very carefully to anything Britain says to do and do the opposite. They've really given you a gift here. They're like a compass that always points south. It's that simple. Just do whatever they think won't work and you'll be fine. You could do what China says, which is another possibility because the China model for the internet is actually the ascendant model. I mean, Chinese cyberspace sovereignty and the Chinese firewall and the heavy policing, that's what people do with the internet now. And it destroys the California ideology. I mean, Google, Apple, Facebook, Amazon, Microsoft, they can't get a toehold in China. What toehold they have is going to be cut off. But the Chinese have worse problems than you. I mean, they're worse off than Europe. What you really want, and really German digital industry's best case scenario for the next 10 or maybe 20 years is a Europe that's much more European. Just be more European. Be more yourselves. So what can we say that we know is true about 2017? Well, not a lot, but some things. We know that people will be older, because that's kind of given. You can't do much about demographics. Germany's getting older. I can see it from the faces here. I can see it when I look in my own mirror. The pages fall off the calendar. The median age in Germany right now is about 42, 43 years old. Another 10 years, it's going to be about 50. I mean, half the German population will be over 50. Then for the rest of the century, it's about 52 or 53. I mean, it evens out. So, the rest of your life is going to be spent in a German society where half the population's older than 50. Okay, there's never been a world like that or a society like that, but you're one of the first to do it. And that's how everybody's going to have to live, including China and most other countries. I mean, these are the demographics. They're really written in stone. So, you need to recognize the truth of that. Then people are going to urbanize or get in bigger and bigger cities. Digital makes cities bigger, so they will be bigger cities. And also there's a lot of environmental decline because of the ongoing carbon pollution. So old people in bigger cities afraid of the sky. That's what the 21st century looks like. Old people, urbanized Germany, one of the oldest and most mature nations. That's the future. And that's a cruel thing to tell the digital people because it's kind of against your ideology of the past 30 or 40 years. I don't want that. I don't want to be old, middle-aged, mature people in big cities with bad weather. I want a life that's dynamic and visionary and innovative and amazing and digital, which is a reasonable thing to ask. And I spent most of my life in those conditions, but we had a lot of that. We already had a lot of that, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, 2 generations of that. Moore's Law, 50 years of that. We had a lot. That's how we got into this situation. This is the consequences of that. And the current order is Google, Apple, Facebook, Amazon, Microsoft, none of which are particularly revolutionary. In 10 years, you'll have 2 million fewer workers in Germany. They're just gone. They'll be dead. People over 50. You're going to have bad weather, really bad for Germany. Storms, droughts, floods, refugee movements. They're happening already. Dominica, Puerto Rico, Houston, Texas. They're the Chernobyl, the Fukushima, the 3 Mile Island of the fossil fuel business. And it's going to get worse. 10 years, it's going to be child's play, what we're going through now, which is the worst storms we've seen. And those are guaranteed. What do you do with Google, Apple, Facebook, Amazon, and Microsoft if you're European? Okay, they seem to have a hammer hold on everything. They're huge. They've got a business model. They've got the best employees, the best technically educated people. From this perspective of Hamburg facing Seattle and San Francisco can seem a little intimidating. Tax them. Tax them, fine them, regulate them, or outlaw their activities. A prosperous European superstate. That's what you want. One that makes the United States look like Brazil. Because the United States is doing its best to make itself Brazil. You can see it every day. You have a political window for that action. It can actually be done. You can compare yourself to Britain. You have a measure there. And maybe the British are right, because they've been right before. Maybe the Russians are right. Maybe the European Union is in fact a big mistake. Maybe you're going to understand in 10 years that they were miraculously insightful and you were the people who were delusional. That's a possibility. I don't think it's very probable. And what would happen if we actually accepted reality? What if we didn't suck because we were realistic and in touch with physical reality? What if we were old people in big cities, but we were kind to young people? And what if our cities were brilliantly well organized and not just smart? And what if we were curing the weather instead of ruining the weather while paying our worst enemies for the oil and the coal? There's more to art and science and culture than digital. There's just more. A digital that doesn't suck. Well, the word digital itself will go away someday. It's going to vanish into the background like automation or electrical or nuclear power or supersonic or the space age or the atomic age. It was an age, but it's getting old. It's getting old. It's outlasted its welcome. So, what do I advise you to do looking at the prospects of 2027? Well, I agree that digital sucks, but I don't think it's digital itself that sucks. I think it sucks because it's in a haze of fraud, exploitation, espionage, deliberate denial, and political lies. That's why our situation is as it is. But what would Hamburg look like if it stepped up to this? Because someone needs to step up and lead the free world. Someone has to lead in this condition of disorder so that we can have a 2027 that we're actually happy to live in. What would it look like if Hamburg lived in truth? Thank you for your attention.
Bruce, where are we going? Bruce, before you go, if you like, we've got plenty of time to take a question or two, if you'd like, but if you've got somewhere to go, then we understand that too. I gave you an out. Would you like to take a question or two?
No, I wouldn't, but I will.
All right.
No questions about Trotsky.
So, to be clear, this is a reluctant Q&A, and keep Trotsky the hell out of it. Are there any questions from you guys? I got to say, Bruce, I admired the dystopian vision.
That's actually realistic. You don't want to see me get dystopian.
I feel like I kind of do. I feel like I don't have to see Blade Runner sequel right now. Are there any questions from you guys? Yeah, there's one in the back.
Is it too early for a beer?
Could somebody get a beer for Bruce? Somebody knock out a beer for my man here? In fact, let's make it 2, because, you know, I'd hate for him to have to drink alone. There is a question in the back.
So, Bruce, you seem to be optimistic about Germany, but how about the German car manufacturers?
How about the German what?
Car manufacturers.
Yeah, well, you know, I think they, obviously committed a very cruel and crazy business with, this Volkswagen fraud. And really, this act of organized software piracy, an assault that they thought nobody would ever catch on to, because they just figured it'd be hidden in the software. But they're certainly not alone in that kind of depredation. I mean, it happens every time. I mean, surveillance marketing is all about that. It's like, we're getting all your data, and don't worry what we did with it, and you don't get to look, and we'll just hide it somewhere else, and it's too complicated for you to worry your little head about it. So, who cares if there's a little extra exhaust out the tailpipe and 5,000 people die of asthma and lung cancer? All right, the industry behaves like that across the board. At least Volkswagen is contrite about it. They're actually willing to say, okay, yeah, we did this bad thing. We're going to rip all the fossil fuel engines out of our cars and put electrical in them. And we'll take the hit, we'll take the loss. Compare that to state of, say, Houston, Texas, capital of the petrochemical industry, which is just hit with rain bombs. The entire population's underwater. The flood in Texas was so severe that it depressed the surface of the soil 2 centimeters from the sheer weight of the flood water. This is the capital of the petrochemical industry. Do you think the mayor of Houston, Texas is getting up and saying, you know what, we shouldn't have burned all that oil? We shouldn't have dug all the oil out of Texas and brought horrific rainstorms on ourselves, which is what they did. But have they admitted it? No. Has Volkswagen admitted it? Yeah. They probably did other things they haven't come clean about, but at least they made that effort. It's not easy to live in truth. If you live in truth, you actually have to come to terms with the long-term implications of your slipshod and sleazy activities, but, I hope they do well by it. Good luck to them. I'd rather have a Volkswagen than a Tesla, if I had a car at all, which I don't.
Absolutely. Just to be clear, that was realism, right? That wasn't dystopian yet. That was pure realism.
Look, you're starting to tempt me here.
If I can just piggyback on what you said about Houston, they also paved over so much of the city that the rainwaters had nowhere to go, and that aided in why the soil level actually sank.
Yeah, well, I'm with the program there, and I'm keen on kind of smart city urbanization and resilient grids and those kinds of sexy German activities. And to the credit of Germany, you've actually done a lot better at this than most other societies. For 20 or 25 years, you've taken all kinds of heat for decarbonizing your technology and putting up all these windmills and building all this solar. It's like, why is there solar in Germany? There's no sun there. It makes no sense. The Germans have utterly lost their minds. Okay, well, now you're way ahead of the game, right? And it's true that Houston has no zoning, that it's got a lot of concrete, and it's also built in a swamp. Houston is basically a giant Anglo-Mexico city. And I used to live there. I'm a native Texan. I know Houston very well. So, it isn't the concrete that drowned them. What drowned them was 50 inches of rainwater from a Category 4 hurricane in an overheated Gulf of Mexico that came from global warming. That's the truth.
All right. Can I just say I really enjoyed all the Apple dissing?
I've got their hardware right here, by the way. I mean, I have 2 pieces of Apple hardware on my body. You know, and I was, I was a guy who wrote, novels on a manual typewriter. When Apple came along and the personal computer revolution began, I was an adult, and I went into it with my eyes open. And they really did think different. I don't want to complain about them. I don't want to kick them just because they're the richest company in the world. They actually deserve that success. They work very hard for it, and they're very great industrial designers. It's just that time has passed, okay? Steve Jobs is dead. He's been dead quite a long time. He's not a current revolutionary. He's a historical figure. The guy's in his grave. He's an elderly hippie who died because he didn't take proper care of his health. He thought he could get rid of liver cancer by eating apples, okay? He wasn't a Superman, and if you ask anyone who knew Steve Jobs personally, you could see that he had clay all over his feet. Okay, that's not to be cruel to Apple. It's like trying to be cruel to General Dynamics or American Telephone and Telegraph or, International Business Machines or, a great German enterprise, IG Farben. I mean, these are titans of industrialism, and, to live in an industrial way has consequences. They do sell jewelry, but the reason they sell jewelry is because of income disparity. I mean, they're selling rich stuff because we have a lot of aristocrats around. They've got the issues of Dubai, and the same is true all over California. They're just behaving like all Californians behave. And if you go to California, which I know very well, that's just their issue. I mean, that's their gold rush ideology. Every gold rush they have finishes ugly. That's who they've been since 1849.
Ladies and gentlemen, there's nothing more we can say. A round of applause for Bruce Sterling. Bruce, are you on Twitter?
I am very on Twitter, but I have a locked account. Good luck with that.
No, it's all right. I gotta follow this guy on Twitter, and I gotta do it like right now.